Hi, Ben here from Trident Fly Fishing. Today I've got with me the all-new TNT Paradigm in the 8-foot 4-inch 4-weight. And the Paradigm is TNT's answer to rods like the Sage Trout LL and the Scott G Series. It's a moderate action dry fly rod that really every manufacturer has been coming out with in the last couple of years. It's a highly crowded market, but we've always been big fans of TNT, and I'm really excited to see how it casts. But first, I want to start at the bottom like we always do and walk you through some of the components on this great rod. As you'd expect from TNT, nothing but the finest materials and build quality have been put into this rod. It's got a really nice single up-locking reel seat and sort of a maple wood insert. And they follow that up with a really nice cigar grip. And I think the cigar is a really good choice for this shorter 4-weight. And we've seen other companies like Winston put a cigar grip on the Pure. It's just a little bit simpler than your standard reverse half wells, and I think it fits nicely. Then, like all TNT rods, you've got this nice sort of matte blue blank, and I think it's a really pretty rod, and TNT is absolutely up there at the very top when it comes to workmanship, and the Paradigm is no exception. One interesting quirk about the Paradigm and a lot of TNT rods is that there's an alignment dot after the butt section, but they decided not to put it on the rest of the sections, which is a little weird, but I guess the idea is that you can use the guides to align it afterwards. Still, we'd like to see it across the entire rod. We've got a titanium finished stripping guide, followed up by titanium recoil single foot snake guides for the rest of the rod. Really nice componentry, just what you'd expect from TNT. But now we're gonna head down to Florida and give this thing a cast. So starting at our first trout distance of 30 feet, the Paradigm actually performed quite well. It was a pleasure to cast. It's maybe not the absolute lightest rod out there, but it definitely gets the job done for these short casts. Moving back to 45 feet, I found that I really had to slow down my casting stroke a little bit, and it became pretty clear that the Paradigm is definitely what it's described, and that is a medium action dry fly specific rod. At 45 feet, you can feel the need to slow down your casting stroke. It's not a rod that you can overpower, otherwise all hell starts to break loose. That said, if you're making the casts that fit the rod, I felt like it was still pretty nice. And overall, it gives you a lot of great feedback and will definitely present a fly really nicely. Another thing that you realize is that while there are some 4-weights on the market that are super light, and I'm talking about the Orvis H3F and the new NRX Plus LP, this Paradigm definitely has some swing weight to it. So it's by no means a heavy rod and not something you'll probably notice, but it's also not the absolute lightest rod on the market. And that becomes very apparent after you've made 20 or 30 casts. One thing that I found interesting as we moved back to our last trout distance of 60 feet is that it actually has quite a bit of performance, understanding the limitations of a medium dry fly rod. So it's not a rod that you necessarily expect to be super accurate, and it absolutely doesn't produce tons and tons of line speed, but if you slow down your casting stroke and time it right, it actually has plenty of power. And it's also a rod that you need to let the rod do the work for you. And if you're double hauling hard, again, the glue comes unstuck and it's just not great for that type of caster. Bottom line, I feel like Paradigm will do really well for the beginning caster who hasn't quite figured out how to make all that line speed happen. And it'll just be a really nice rod to cast for them. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, I feel like the advanced caster who can slow down his timing and adjust things to the fishing conditions will also enjoy the Paradigm in the right conditions, particularly those small spring creeks and anywhere you want to fish a single dry fly. After casting the Paradigm, I feel like it accomplishes what it set out to do, which is to be a moderate action dry fly rod. I didn't feel like it was particularly the absolute best moderate action dry fly rod, but it's a rod that a lot of people are going to like. In particular, I think that beginners who haven't learned a double haul and are just out there enjoying their small local streams will really love this. And I think a lot of more advanced casters who can slow down that casting stroke and adapt to a rod that is more moderate, like this paradigm, will also really like this. I think in the middle, it's going to be a little bit tougher for those intermediate casters that are used to maybe double hauling every time, and they're not quite at the point where they can change things up for given conditions. With that said, the new paradigm is a great rod and a great addition to the TNT lineup. And it's definitely a true moderate action, which we like to see. But now let's get to our Poseidon score. Starting with accuracy, I really liked this rod in close, and I thought in the right hands it also worked really well at longer distances, particularly given the rod that it is, a soft 4-weight. It wasn't quite as good in the middle as some of the other rods out there, which is a little unfortunate. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for accuracy. In terms of components, TNT does a really great job, and while not the absolute top of the line technology, you wouldn't necessarily expect that from a moderate action 4-weight, and I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. When it comes to distance and power, this is a moderate 4-weight, and it's not that great. With that said, it's definitely better than some of the glass rods we've tested, and I'd say it's a 5 out of 10. In terms of the grip, I really like it. It's a nice cigar shape, and TNT uses absolutely the top grade cork, and I've given it a 9 out of 10. In terms of looks and workmanship, TNT is really, really good, and it definitely deserves a 9.5 out of 10. The swing weight on the Paradigm comes in at 48 gram meters squared, which is lighter than the Trout LL, but not as light as rods like the Hardy Ultralight or the Orvis H3F, and I've given it a 7 out of 10 for swing weight. You'll definitely feel a light rod, but not so light that you forgot you have a rod in your hand. And some people might actually prefer that. In terms of value, the Paradigm is not a cheap rod, but you do get a lot of value for your money from TNT in terms of that workmanship and a really nice looking rod. So I'd say it's probably a 7 out of 10 in terms of value. Last but not least is the cool factor, and the Paradigm is definitely an anticipated rod, and TNT is an up-and-coming company, but it's definitely not the hottest rod out there on the market today, and I'd say it's probably a 7 out of 10. And that brings us to a total Poseidon score of 61.5, which I think is actually pretty great given the somewhat specialized nature of this rod. The all-new Paradigm is available with free second-day air shipping from tridentflyfishing.com. If you have questions about the new Paradigm or any rod in the TNT lineup, give us a call at 888-413-5211 or email us 24/7 at support@tridentflyfishing.com. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave us a thumbs up and a comment in the box below. I'm Ben. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.